The basic storyline of this book is the answer to a question that I have heard probably 5,000 times since Gerry Sandusky of Penn State was arrested. And that question was, why don't you change your name? This book is the answer to that question. And it's because, and Father's Day is a really good day to kind of share this, is that this book is about the details of my life growing up as a coach's son, which is somewhat unique, but I tried to write it in a way that it would resonate with everybody else so that they would kind of feel the details of their life and sense the legacy of their life as well. I heard Stephen Covey say once that the key to the many is the one. You know, the more you give one example, the more everybody can kind of relate to that. And my background was unique, but I didn't realize that until I was in college. I remember being a freshman at Towson University, and the very first Sunday I was in college, I looked out the window on the quad in the middle of a football game. I saw all these kids milling around. And I thought, what are they doing? The game's on. And it was the first time in my life the thought had ever crossed my mind that everybody's life didn't revolve around the NFL. Because mine had. I mean, so, you know, you only know your own example. And that was kind of a eureka moment. I was like, what? Your whole life doesn't go to the metronome of Sunday game, Monday through Saturday preparation, Sunday game? You know, as a coach's son, I would say, even to this day, the families feel the wins and the losses more than the coaches and the players. The coaches and players absorb it, but they have so little time to turn it around. They have to dive right back in. They have no time to lick their wounds. You know, you get beat on Sunday, great. Feel bad on Sunday night. On Monday, you're working, you're knee deep, and you're back in 16-hour days, and the grind continues. But for the family, you carry it from Sunday to Sunday, and then you carry it from season to season, and then era to era. You know, and this is, you know, a different era, and it was an era that I didn't want to be forgotten, because, you know, this era that we live in now will live forever because of the digital age. Everything that happens now will be Googleable. You know, whatever Joe Flacco does in the season opening game, you can find that on Google, or whatever version of Google comes 10 years from now, forever. Go back and find, you know, what happened in the 55 championship game at the LA Coliseum. I mean, you're talking about digging into some pretty deep archives to find stuff on microfilm and, you know, occasional Cleveland newspaper that you might find a clipping of. And so that part of life, I didn't want to see it disappear without capturing kind of what happened, not just historically, but emotionally. Because the way I wrote this book was, the arc of the narrative is what I think the journey all men make. And that is the journey to get to know their dad, to get to know who he is as a man. And in that process, the person you really get to know is yourself. I know for me, mine was, you start off and your father is iconic, he's infallible. And then as an 8-year-old, I saw my father lose in Super Bowl III. And so you realize that maybe your father is fallible. And then by the time you're a teenager, all you see are your father's flaws. It's nothing but the mistakes he makes. And why isn't he this and why isn't he that? And by the time I became a young adult, I was so filled with my own arrogance, like most young adults are, which you need to compel you into life. All I could see was my father's shortcomings and his incompleteness in, you know, how he should deal with death and how he should deal with loss and how he should deal with life's challenges. And I had all these theories of, you know, well, he should be doing this, he should be doing that. And then as I started to make the journey into adulthood with him, I figured out what all men, not be like you, would know. At some point, you realize there was no operating manual. Your dad was just doing the best he could and had no idea what the hell he was doing anyway. Was doing it the very best he could. And as your arrogance from your 20s wears down, and life will wear that out of you, you realize that your dad was just doing the best he could possibly do. And that's when you start to appreciate your dad. Because I've heard it said, you can drive from Baltimore to Los Angeles in the middle of the night without seeing any farther than the throw of your headlights. And that really is manhood. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what the future holds. You don't have the answer to everything. And life really is a series of challenges that you don't know what you're supposed to do. But once you're the dad, you you've got to try to figure it out. And it wasn't until I probably became a dad and was raising my own family that I fully appreciated all that my father had to do and still beat the Packers on Sunday. At a time when coaches didn't make $1 million a year.
Yeah.
When they made the same thing the guy down the street made. You know, the same thing the carpenter made, the same thing the baker made, the same thing the butcher made. That's what a coach made. And that was the appreciation that I grew to, that manhood isn't having all the answers. It's doing your level-headed best, knowing that you don't have all the answers. And so I think that's how men teach the next generation of men to become men. You know, it's kind of ironic that I wrote a book about it, but the real lesson is men teach men largely without words. It's more about examples. And I'll share one of those stories with you that really resonates with me. December of '72, it's a story that's in the book. Colts were playing their final home game at Memorial Stadium. My dad was the interim head coach in that year, and from the time he became the interim head coach, the general manager, Joe Thomas, told my father, "You cannot play Johnny Unitas. Absolutely forbidden." Thomas had decided he was going to trade Johnny Unitas at the end of the season, didn't want any publicity, so he wanted to make sure that he could get Johnny Unitas out of town with as little backlash as possible. I mean, this was a bad man, Joe Thomas. So the game's playing out, and the Colts are beating the Bills soundly. It's the fourth quarter, and Marty Domrese comes to the sideline on the last play, and he's kind of hobbling a little bit, and taking a helmet on the hip. My dad looked at him, he said, "That hip looks pretty bad. I guess you probably can't go anymore, huh, Marty?" And Marty's like, I don't know, John. I'm fine. He goes, "Look, I'm going to go and have a conversation with Unitas. When I point at you, you point to your hip and go thumbs down." So my dad goes down to Unitas and says, "Look, Marty took a shot on the hip. You know, I need you to get in the game." And Johnny U was like, "John, I'm not mopping up for anybody." And my dad, "John, I'm not asking to mop up. Marty can't go. Look." And he points to Domrese, and Domrese points to his hip, and he goes thumbs down. So Unitas peels off his park and starts warming up, and the place goes nuts. Well, this is the same game that we remember as the banner plane that pulled the banner over top of Memorial Stadium that read "Unitas We Stand." It's that game. Unitas gets in the game, hands the ball off a couple of times, throws it. Pass is deflected at the line, flutters in the air. It looks like it's either going to be incomplete or maybe intercepted. It's kind of like a glass of water falling off the table where it's playing out slowly. And a rookie receiver named Eddie Hinton splits two defensive backs, grabs the ball, takes it for a touchdown. It's the last pass United throws as the Baltimore Colts.
Ooh.
So on the drive home, I asked my dad, I said, "Well, you know, what about your boss? What about Joe Thomas?" And my dad was a World War II veteran. He was, you know, Catholic. He was coach. He believed in following the chain of command and clearly violated the chain of command. And he said, "Screw Joe Thomas." Well, at the end of the season, my father gets fired. Now, was he fired because of that? Who's to say yay or nay? But we had this conversation many times over the years. And I said, if you could do it all over again, would you have changed that decision and maybe stayed on as a head coach, maybe gotten another head coaching job, because he never got another head coaching job? He said no, because for that one moment in time, I had the power to do the right thing for the right guy in the right situation, and I did it. And that was the extent of the conversation. But the lesson that I took away from that is, being a man means doing the right thing, but doing the right thing doesn't always mean doing the best thing for yourself. So fast forward 40 years. My son Zach is a freshman in college this past year, and he attends James Madison University. Likes it, doesn't love it, decides he wants a more urban campus. You didn't notice this was in the country when you signed up here? Translation, his girlfriend goes to Louisville. So Zach decides he's going to transfer to Louisville. Fine, we transfer to Louisville, drive him to school in January, and get there and move him into his dorm. And the dorm he's assigned to live at the University of Louisville, Johnny Unitas Tower. Walks into Unitas Tower, and there's a little desk like this, and the RA, the head residents, are sitting behind it. Behind them on the wall is a banner that reads, "Unitas We Stand." So I looked at the kids, I said, "Do you know the story behind that?" And they go, "No idea what it is. It's always been here. I have no idea what it means." So I tell them the story of Unitas We Stand. And then I point to Zach, and I said, and the coach who put Unitas in for his final pass on that game was his grandfather. Well, the kids come flying over the desk, and they're hugging Zach, and they're lifting him up. And I look at Zach, and I said, if you can't clean up on this campus after that setup, you are no son of mine. Right. Needless to say, he has fit in perfectly at the University of Louisville. And that's the power of legacy. You know, that his grandfather did something that was the right thing, that cost him his job. And 40 years later, paves the way for his grandson to find his place in his school. And to me, that's the value of a name. And so while millions of Americans, and I've heard from most of them, might confuse my name with the former Penn State coach, I'm not surrendering my name, because that's what my name means. And the lesson that I've learned is that it's not my name to change anyway. It's mine in stewardship. Just like manhood stewardship. You take what you're given and you do your best with what you have or while you have it. And then you pass it along. So the moral of the story at the end is that my father had Alzheimer's the last 5 years of his life. Forgot absolutely everything. You know, forgot that he was a World War II veteran. Forgot that he was the 18th player taken in the NFL draft. Forgot that he coached at 4 Super Bowls. Forgot that he won Super Bowl 5. Forgot all of that. But because of legacy, there are no forgotten Sundays. Which was the thrust behind this book. So even though it's, you know, football on the cover, it's really a story of family and fathers and manhood and imperfection and doing your damn best anyway. So on Father's Day, it's pretty fun just to share that story, to put it out in the world, and hear back from people, because, you know, my dad's gone, but he's not. So while you have your dad today, go do something really special.
We do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.